Have you ever felt like you've been searching for something your entire life, yet you couldn't even name what it was? Not love, not success, not even happiness. Something deeper, something older than words, like a whisper behind every conversation, a pull behind every goal, a hunger behind every accomplishment. You feel it most when everything is finally fine. When the job is stable, the rent is paid, your friends are laughing, and you're smiling along. But some part of you is still, floating, unanchored, watching it all like a movie you've seen before. And in that quiet, in the stillness between moments, you wonder, why do I feel like I'm not really here? You scroll, you work, you chase. You read all the right books, listen to all the right podcasts, follow all the right people, and still something is off. Like there's a layer of glass between you and life, as if you're dreaming someone else's dream. People tell you, you just need to find your purpose. So you search. You journal, you meditate, you ask the big questions. But the answers are slippery. They either sound like cliches or lead to more confusion. You find yourself endlessly trying to construct meaning, like building a house out of shadows. And here's the paradox. What if the more you search for meaning, the more you miss it? What if meaning is not a destination you reach, but a realization that's already waiting right here, behind your assumptions? Imagine this. You're standing in a foggy forest. You're searching for the path. You try to light a fire to see better, but the smoke only thickens. And then something strange happens. You stop. You go silent. And suddenly, the fog begins to clear, not because you moved forward, but because you finally stopped moving. Could it be that the meaning you've been chasing has been quietly chasing you? That your constant need to find your why is exactly what blinds you to it? Alan Watts once said, "Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth." In our desperation to define a meaningful life, we forget how to live one. You've been told that meaning is something you earn, that it lies at the end of achievement, in the arms of the right partner, in the approval of the right crowd, in the corner office with the right view. But what if that's all backwards? What if the truth is far more unsettling? That meaning isn't something you create. It's something you wake up to. Something that's always been present, patiently waiting beneath the noise, beneath the striving, beneath the self-help mantras and productivity hacks. Waiting for one thing, that you stop running long enough to notice it. Because maybe, just maybe, the purpose of life was never to chase some distant prize. Maybe the prize is being fully awake to the life already unfolding through you. The wind brushing your skin. The laugh that bubbles up when you're not trying to impress anyone. The tears you cry alone at night that no one ever sees, yet are more real than 1,000 social media smiles. And maybe the biggest lie you've been sold is that you're separate from that meaning, that you need to earn it, find it, or be good enough for it. But what if the only thing standing between you and a meaningful life is the belief that you have to search for one? So then, who would you be without the search? What would remain if you let go of the chase? What if meaning isn't something to find, but something to remember? And if that's true, what's really keeping you asleep? Let's go deeper. Because once you see what's behind the illusion, you'll never unsee it. What if the very way you were taught to live is what numbs you to life itself? From the moment you could walk, you were handed a map. Go to school, get the grades, get the job, build the life. And somewhere along that straight line meaning would appear, like a prize handed to the obedient. But here's the catch. The map was drawn by people who never asked if the destination was real. They only asked if it worked. You weren't raised to awaken. You were conditioned to perform, to be productive, polite, predictable, not alive, not present, not aware. You learned to fit in, not to feel deeply. And slowly, without even realizing it, your sense of self became a performance. Your smile became a habit. Your goals became scripts. This is the hidden problem. You mistake noise for meaning. Because noise is familiar, it keeps the mind busy. And in a world terrified of stillness, busyness is worshipped. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. So we scroll, we hustle, we drown ourselves in movement, all to avoid the one thing that might actually wake us up, silence. But silence is where meaning lives, and we've been trained to fear it. Think about it. When was the last time you were truly still without distraction, without a goal, without trying to fix anything? No music, no notifications, just you, breathing, existing. Did it feel peaceful or unbearable? Most people can't stand silence because it reveals how loud the mind really is. And in that mental noise, you hear the voices that have shaped you. You're not enough. You have to prove your worth. You're falling behind. And so, the search begins not for meaning, but for escape. We look for answers in books, gurus, morning routines, spiritual fads. But the search often becomes another addiction, a more refined form of running. Because the ego doesn't want you to wake up. It wants you to keep looking as long as you never find. Because if you ever truly stop, the illusion dies. This is where Alan Watts pierces through the fog. He didn't speak of life as a task or a riddle. He saw it as a dance. Not something to win, but something to join. To him, life wasn't about finding meaning, it was meaning. Every breath, every step, every absurd moment. But that view threatens the modern world. Because if you wake up to the fact that you are already whole, you become useless to the machine. You stop chasing. You stop consuming. You stop being predictable. And a person who no longer needs permission to feel alive, that person can't be controlled. Nietzsche called it the death of God, the collapse of inherited structures of meaning. He saw the terror of freedom, that once the old scaffolding falls, people will either become creators or crumble. So society offers you a deal. We'll give you structure. Just don't ask if it's real. You're handed purpose in a prepackaged form. Job titles, follower counts, lifestyle aesthetics. It gives you the illusion of meaning without the discomfort of confronting the unknown. But real meaning isn't found in what you do. It emerges in how you experience what you do. Not from outside in, but from inside out. It's in the quality of your attention, the depth of your presence, the courage to sit in uncertainty without flinching. And this is why most never wake up. Not because they can't, but because doing so would shatter everything they've built around the false self. To awaken is to die before you die, to see that the self you've been protecting was never really you. It was a mask stitched together by fear and expectation. And meaning? It's not hiding in the distance. It's embedded in the very fabric of this moment, if only you'd stop long enough to notice. But most people don't want to notice. Because noticing demands the one thing we fear more than death, living without illusion. So ask yourself, what have you mistaken for meaning? What parts of you are still asleep, dreaming someone else's dream? Because the moment you ask that question with your whole being, you're already beginning to wake up. What happens when a society loses its sense of real meaning, yet keeps pretending it has one? You get a world that looks functional, on the surface glossy, productive, efficient. But underneath, it's cracking. We work longer hours than ever. We are more connected, more stimulated, more informed. And yet anxiety, depression, burnout, and suicide are epidemic. Not because people are weak, but because they are starving. Starving for something that can't be clicked, bought, or scheduled. And the most disturbing part? Most don't even realize they're starving. Because they've been taught to call the hunger ambition. They've been trained to feel guilty for slowing down, ashamed for not knowing their why, and afraid of the emptiness that silence reveals. So they keep moving. It starts subtly, You wake up with a dull ache you can't explain. You check your phone before you even breathe. You fill the space between moments with noise, podcasts, playlists, reels. You tell yourself it's self-improvement, but it's really anesthesia, a distraction from the existential discomfort of not knowing who you really are. Because when you don't know who you are, you become easy to market to. You buy things to signal an identity. You chase goals to feel valid. You post to prove you exist. And yet, with every swipe, with every achievement, with every curated version of your life, you drift further from yourself. You become a performance of meaning, not the presence of it. This is how culture keeps you asleep. Not with violence, but with entertainment, with convenience, with the promise that you're almost there, just one more step, one more product, one more milestone away. Aldous Huxley warned of this exact outcome. He didn't fear a world censored by tyrants. He feared a world so flooded with irrelevance, so saturated with distraction, that truth becomes invisible. In Brave New World, people don't rebel because they're oppressed. They don't want to rebel because their suffering has been replaced with pleasure. Their questions have been replaced with comfort. And isn't that eerily familiar? Your pain isn't denied, it's medicated. Your confusion isn't explored, it's pathologized. Your stillness isn't honored, it's diagnosed as a productivity issue. And so the machine keeps humming. Your confusion becomes profit. Your restlessness becomes content. Your fear of meaninglessness becomes the fuel of endless consumption. But here's the twist. It's not just about society. It's about you. Because the machine only works if you agree to wear the mask. If you agree to stay busy instead of still. To stay certain instead of curious. To stay numb instead of awake. And this agreement, this sleepwalking through life, has consequences. Subtle ones, but devastating. You start to feel chronically disoriented. Not lost in space, but in time. Always rushing toward the future. Haunted by the past, never truly here. You sit in a room with people you love, but you're not really with them. You smile at your own child, but something inside feels like it's watching from behind glass. You achieve what you once thought would complete you, and feel nothing. Because when you live disconnected from meaning, everything becomes hollow. And what do you do when you feel hollow? You reach for the next thing, the next task, the next role, the next reinvention. It works for a while, but the silence always returns. Because meaning isn't something you can escape forever. It will haunt you in the quiet hours. It will call to you in your dreams. It will ache inside you every time you pretend to be something you're not. And if you ignore it long enough, it turns to illness. Not just mental, but spiritual. The sickness of a life unlived. The grief of never having met your true self. That's the cost of chasing meaning like it's an object. You end up further away than when you began. So look around. Look at the culture of noise, the cult of hustle, the obsession with growth at all costs. What is it really? A massive collective avoidance of the moment. The moment where meaning already is, if only we had the courage to be with it. Because here's the secret few will tell you. You don't need more. You need less. Less striving, less seeking, less pretending. You don't need to add meaning to your life. You need to subtract everything that numbs you to it. Only then does the fog begin to lift. Only then can you begin to hear what's been calling you all along. The question is, will you answer? Or will you keep pretending you're just one goal away? It begins the moment you stop asking what you're supposed to do and start listening to what's already speaking through you. Not a voice from the outside, not a quote from a guru, not a slogan wrapped in self-help language, but a whisper you've drowned out for years, the one that doesn't scream, doesn't beg. It waits. It's been with you since the beginning, before the titles, before the expectations, before you forgot who you were beneath the masks. Rebellion in this context, isn't loud. It's not breaking things. It's not running away. It's far more dangerous than that. It's becoming still. Still enough to see through the illusions. Still enough to feel what you were never taught to feel. Still enough to remember the truth you were conditioned to forget. You are already what you're looking for. This is the radical shift, the turning inside out of everything you've been told. You don't create meaning like a sculptor chiseling stone. You become aware of meaning like clouds, parting to reveal the sky that was always there. And once you see that, you stop needing the performance. You stop needing the mask. You stop seeking approval from systems that profit off your self-doubt. You walk differently, not with arrogance, but with quiet clarity. You start to choose your life instead of reacting to it. But it's not easy, because waking up means grieving the life you built in sleep. It means realizing that the ladder you are climbing leads to a wall you don't believe in. It means letting go of identities that made you feel safe, even if they made you miserable. It means facing the emptiness, not to escape it, but to enter it. Because on the other side of that emptiness is something sacred. This is where Watts spoke truth that few dare echo. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Let that land. You've been trying to fix yourself like a broken machine. But you're not a machine. You're a process, a happening, a wave in the ocean of existence, not separate, not flawed, not behind. So how do you rebel in a world that profits off your disconnection? You unlearn. You unlearn the idea that your worth is tied to productivity. You unlearn the belief that life must have a purpose outside of itself. You unlearn the obsession with becoming and rediscover the joy of being. You turn your attention inward, not to analyze, but to observe. To sit in silence, not to fix your mind, but to meet it. To let thoughts come and go like weather through a vast sky. You drop the chase. You realize that the more you grasp for meaning, the more it slips through your fingers. But when you surrender the search, truly surrender, it rushes in quietly like breath. And this surrender is not weakness. It's the beginning of power. Because a person who no longer fears the void becomes untouchable. You become immune to manipulation. You no longer need applause to know your value. You no longer need a mission statement to justify your existence. You don't become lazy, you become liberated. You create from overflow, not desperation. You connect without agenda. You feel without needing to label. You become dangerous, not because you harm, but because you cannot be owned. This is the true rebellion, to live in full presence in a world of distraction, to see with clear eyes in a culture of denial, to say, I am here, not as a brand, not as a role, but as a living, breathing moment of awareness. You stop playing the game, not by leaving society, but by no longer needing it to tell you who you are. You show up to your job with the same tasks, but a different presence. You speak the same words, but from a deeper truth. You wake up in the same bed, but the dream is over. And that's when it begins. Real meaning flows in, not because you hunted it down, but because you finally stopped running away. It was never missing, only unseen, buried beneath layers of shoulds, goals, fears, and noise. Now stripped of illusion, you stand in the naked presence of what is, and you don't flinch. You bow, you breathe, you live. What if the greatest secret is that there is no secret? No hidden code, no final formula, no door to kick down or mountain to climb. Just this moment, this breath, this strange, quiet miracle of simply existing and being aware of it. Not as a concept, not as a theory, but as a felt truth burning silently behind your eyes. A final realization is almost too simple to accept. You are not a seeker. You are what's being sought. You don't find meaning like you find a lost object. You wake up to the fact that you are never separate from it. that the search itself was the distraction, that all the striving, all the suffering, all the chasing was the ego's desperate attempt to avoid the terrifying, beautiful truth. You are it. You've always been it. There's nothing else. Alan Watts described it not as a discovery, but as a remembering. The way a dreamer becomes lucid, not by escaping the dream, but by realizing it's a dream. And once that shift happens, the world doesn't disappear. It becomes alive. Colors deepen. Sounds sharpen. Time softens. You stop resisting life as if it's something to overcome. And instead, you begin to participate fully, consciously, without demand. There is no longer a you standing apart from life, trying to conquer it. There is only life expressing itself as you. And in that moment, all the things you thought you needed to find meaning, success, validation, understanding fall away like old skin. They weren't bad. They just weren't you. Because who you truly are cannot be found. It can only be remembered. So now, the question is no longer, what is the meaning of life? But rather, can I be awake enough to experience it? And that changes everything. You stop trying to control outcomes. You stop trying to label every experience as good or bad, forward or backward, progress or failure. You stop living life as a problem to be solved and start living it as a mystery to be danced with. You let go, not as a tactic, not as a performance, but because there's nothing left to hold on to. You see a tree and it's just a tree. You look at a stranger and see your reflection. You feel the wind and realize it's the same force that breathes through you. You are no longer separate from the moment. You are the moment. And meaning is no longer a prize to attain. It's the very texture of your awareness. This is what liberation feels like. Not floating above life, but sinking into it fully, vulnerably, lovingly. You realize that freedom is not the absence of limits. It's the absence of illusion. That love is not something you give or receive. It's the field in which all things arise. That death is not the end. It's the shedding of what was never truly you. And suddenly, all the pain begins to make sense. Not because it disappears, but because it brought you here, to this place, to this quiet awakening. The heartbreak, the confusion, the longing, they were not signs that you were lost. They were invitations. They were thresholds. And now that you've crossed them, what do you find? Not a grand reward, not a cosmic answer, but something even deeper. Peace, the kind that doesn't depend on circumstance, the kind that doesn't need a reason, the kind that has no opposite, just peace, just presence, just you, unmasked, unchained, unfinished. Because the journey doesn't end here, it begins here. Not on the outside, but within. You are not here to win life. You are here to feel it, to be broken by it, to be healed by it, to dissolve into it and rise again, over and over, in deeper forms of truth. This is the meaning you were searching for. Not an idea, but a way of being, a way of seeing, a way of loving. And the only question that remains is, will you stay awake, or will you fall back into the dream?